Welcome to AT Parenting Survival Podcast, where you get support and guidance through the chaos of parenting. Here's your host, child therapist, Natasha Daniels.
Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of the AT Parenting Survival Podcast. I hope you're doing well today. Today, we're going to be talking about adoption, foster care, and just motherhood and the struggles of raising a child maybe in the way that we hadn't envisioned, or having expectations that didn't align and coming out through the other side. I have invited Janelle Molony onto the show, and she is the author of this newly released memoir called Unadoptable, Faith Beyond Foster Care. She is just an amazing person to listen to. She is inspiring. I follow her on Instagram and have really enjoyed everything that she's put out there. And she did not disappoint when I actually talked to her for this interview. She was inspiring, and she has such good words and good messages to share with the rest of us. So regardless of whether you've ever encountered the world of foster or adoption, this is still going to be so relevant to you, because her words can really be generalized to all of us and all of our struggles through parenthood. So I hope that you enjoy my conversation as much as I did. And without further ado, here's my conversation with Janelle. Well, I want to welcome Janelle Molony to the show. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to finally meet you and be able to share my story with all the other mothers and families.
Yeah, and you have a really interesting story. I've been following you on Instagram, stalking you on Instagram, because I love you did this whole rap thing, which actually has just been, not to start our episode with this, but I do want to say that's kind of what got my attention. I was like, every time I see you in my feed, I stop and I'm like, I just love listening to your poem raps. But we're not going to talk about that right now. We'll talk about that later. But I just wanted to say that that's kind of what got me hooked on following your feed. So you were a foster mom. Now you're an adopted mom.
Right.
And I just want to start with your story, because I don't even know your full story. And it'd be really interesting to hear how you got started, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. So we were not able, my husband and I were not able to have our own biological children. So we pursued foster to adopt, which in California is the mandatory way to adopt from foster care. So first you have to be a foster parent. Then you can apply for that child that you're taking care of. So that's okay. It's cheaper than paying $40,000, $50,000 for a private adoption. And we thought by pursuing an older child, we would have a lot more information on this child. We would know already medical diagnoses, preferences, habits, and in my mind, maybe that meant easier. And so we met this little boy who had no medical diagnoses at all. Perfect little boy. And he came to our house to stay for the weekend as a respite care. So while you're waiting to receive a placement, you can opt in to be a respite provider or a babysitter, in other words. And we said, sure, we'll do that. We were pursuing some other children at the time. And this boy came to us. And then his current foster family never came back.
What?
Yeah, no, it's super illegal. They broke so many rules.
Whoa. Anyways. Wait, how old was he at the time?
He will say he was 7. So he was completely abandoned at that point. And
that's terrible.
Yeah. So we have trauma upon trauma at this point. So he's lost his biological family, and now the foster home he was currently in, that would have been a long-term placement, has said, sayonara. So we were asked, hey, could you just hang on to him for a while? Could you please, we don't know what to do. This is not normal. So just hold on to him. And we did. And 6 months later, he was still with us. And over that time, I had no idea what was possible that could emerge from me as a mother that was not supposed to be with this boy, that never planned to be with a boy like this. And I completely fell in love. And all those primal I don't know, I can't say they're hormonal, but those primal protective urges emerged, and I became his mother in that process. So that is the very, very short version of our story of how I became a mother to
lucky
my
for
son.
him. I mean, lucky for him, that he got placed in a home where you had those maternal instincts and you felt bonded, and that worked for him. That's an interesting story.
Thank you. Yeah, in the process, we were able to watch, I don't know if that's the right word, we were watching him unravel and reveal the significant amount of anxieties, significant amount of traumas that were present or created in his prior life situation. And so one of the things that we experienced was learning on the go of how to be a better parent for this particular diagnosis or for this particular part of the journey where maybe he was regressing to infancy, and just on the drop of a dime, okay, now we are parents to a 7-year-old infant who needs to be bottle fed.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe a week later, now we are parents to a 7-year-old who needs to be in diapers again, and just being completely flexible to whatever he needed. And that included just, I guess, opening the door for a plethora of diagnoses that I had no idea I was capable of handling. And for the most part, I would say I wasn't, that I had to confront and I had to figure out as we were going along. And that's all in the book. And what happens in the mind of the mother, to even the mom has to unravel and unwrap all of the expectations, all of the hopes, all of the what nows, and am I good enough, or am I capable, and who do I look to? Because there was just so much in such a short period of time between when we met him and 6 months later for me to come to that conclusion of, I think I can do this.
Yeah, which is actually really impressive, I think, without having any expectation. So you weren't prepared.
Right.
It's funny that we crossed paths, because I used to do, and we're both in the same state too. And I used to do in my past life, foster care, right out of graduate school, I did foster care licensing, and then I did foster care supervision, where I would supervise foster homes, and I did adoption. And whenever I did foster care training, I think they removed me from it because I was just too frank. I would just be like, it's going to be rough. There are going to be, these are the things that you're going to see. And, to prepare people to have those skills, not to scare them off, but to scare those people who are like, my son just needs a playmate, and I didn't want that, because I didn't want disruptions. I wanted really solid forever families. And so I went above and beyond, giving them skills. Let's prepare you. And these are all.
Yeah, I have a list of things I wish. Yeah, I wish someone had told me these things. I wish you were in my classes. I wish someone had told me to lower my expectations or begin my own family therapy or my own personal therapy right now, because on top of my son's anxieties and his fears and his disruption in his family and just complete loss of identity, I had my own. So now we have two people going crazy and losing their everything that they feel is safe and secure about their lives. And we're both imploding and exploding at the same time. And that's where those disruptions happen. And that's where maybe as a mom, I made some very bad choices, or maybe someone on the outside looked in and said, oh, this is never going to work, because we appear to be falling apart. So yeah, the supports, oh man, if I had a therapist in my life to start off with and just help walk me down into the darkness and promise me that we're going to walk back up, that would have been great.
Yeah. Lost probably a few there when I shared that. But, you can, if you want a flashlight in that darkness, it's good to give someone a flashlight so that they can get out and they can, see that light a lot quicker. And those that you're going to feel like, you're going to feel like a bad mom. You're going to feel like you're not equipped. And I really feel like a lot of the parents that listen to the show who aren't fostering or have adopted feel the same way, even with their biologically anxious kids, where it's not the expectation And so there's something about expectation in general, I think, parentally that kind of gets us all hooked, where we can't help but have an idea of what life is supposed to look like,
Yeah.
Whether we birth a baby or we foster a baby or we adopt a baby or a child, we have this expectation of this is what it's going to look like. And when it doesn't match that, that's very jarring. And it's almost hard not to put it back on ourselves and say, I'm supposed to be enjoying this right now. I'm supposed to handle this.
Or I should have seen it coming.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good one too. Yeah. So,
I do feel like there's this invisible, it's jargon. The invisible hurt is this mental illness where I can't foresee it. I can plan so many things, and then something new will appear, or now he's afraid of this, or now he's one of the things he became is light sensitive, which for a while I thought he was making up. I said, well, you weren't light sensitive last year. But who knows, as he's growing and hormones are changing and he is settling into a new life and a new home, and he's becoming more aware of his anxieties, including sensory issues.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he's now becoming aware and can communicate that he's light sensitive. And I need to take that as gold.
Yeah.
Instead of doubting and wondering, gosh, I didn't know you were, and you weren't yesterday, so therefore you shouldn't be today. That's crazy talk.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure it's so ever evolving for you, because once that trauma kind of settles down and there's stability, sometimes it's the subtle stuff they start to notice because they're in the safe place now. And so it's like, oh my gosh, I am sensitive to light. Never noticed that because I was all like, in fight or flight, and, I was hyper aroused the entire time. But now that things are settling, and it's hard too, because I think it's a little bit of a roller coaster ride for a while until things fully settle.
Right. I wonder what's going to come out as he gets older and more hormonal changes are present, and maybe there's more peers who are a little bit more aware of him as well. So he's 11 now, and so his peers are still real wonky and unaware of themselves or anyone else. But once they start to become hypocritical, those 13, 14, where they start comparing and competing, I do wonder how much more he will become aware of how different he does think, or how wrong things appear when compared to what everyone else is doing. And those differences might be exaggerated, unfortunately, unfairly. And now that's my anxiety out on the table. So I wonder how 5 years in the future, how am I going to handle this? And how am I going to equip him to advocate for himself, to speak up and say, actually, I'm light sensitive, and therefore I'm going to wear my sunglasses in the classroom, and be okay with it and not worry that he's going to be teased or anything. That's just, it is who you are, and you speak up for what you need. I want him to be confident. And so that means I have to become confident in him and in my own ability to advocate for him, so that I can demonstrate. How do we do this? How do we move forward? But this is so weird because it's not my struggle. It's not my battle. It's so far removed from me. It's in this other little person who might not have the words or the capacity to communicate exactly what it is he's going through. So I'm not a mind reader. What do I do with that?
Yeah. And I wouldn't look at 5 years from now, because, it doesn't help. And I think it just revs up the anxiety. And really everything you're going through is very similar to anyone who's raising a child with anxiety or OCD. Like, we catastrophize and we think things, 5 miles out, and how are we going to navigate this? And most of the time it doesn't even happen that way. It just doesn't unfold in that way. I've done that with my child. My 16-year-old, my gosh, I worried enough for all 3 of my kids with her, because she was so severe in so many different ways. And now she's like a very typical 16-year-old. And I'm just like, I want those years back that I set.
Oh gosh.
Her.
Yeah.
She was really non-functional at certain points. And I thought, how on earth is she ever going to function? So I say, get tunnel vision. That's my that's my advice for everybody, is get tunnel vision and focus on the now. But it doesn't mean that you go blind and you're like just ignorant to the future. It's just looking at what he can do now, and those little opportunities for him to advocate for himself or to model advocating, even if you don't know always what he needs advocating for, is helpful. It's even in the subtle things, like, can you go ask them for a straw? That stuff that my mom didn't do with me, because I had social anxiety, and I'd be like, I'm not going to go ask, and that should have been encouraged, because it's advocating. It really is advocating for yourself. Like, oh, it's too hot in here. Why don't you go tell him to turn it down?
You can do something about it. You can help. And you don't have to affect everybody, but you can definitely affect yourself. You can definitely have that positive impact on your own body comfort sensory system.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. And empowering them to do that. Yeah, I agree. So it's been a while. So he's 11. So 4 years.
Yes, he's almost 12.
That's fun. Good luck with that.
We've been all the way through the regressive infancy, all the way up to almost, Mom, I've got this, don't tell me what to do. And it's such a rapid experience for me in just those 4 years to go from holding a very incapable person to he's on his own. He has a cell phone now. And I think, whoa. And I just, I almost grieve for those moments that I had a baby for a moment.
Yeah.
And he's become so capable and so communicative and bright. And I'm thoroughly amazed. But that's what I'm looking back. And when I look forward, I get the anxiety. When I look back, I get reassured. And I want to tell the other mothers that are in that situation where they have a child where they're discovering something's off, or they're discovering, I'm going to have to take on a bigger burden, to remember to not look forward too far, as you were saying, but, look back. And there are moments of success and tenderness and encouraging reminders that you are doing the right thing, that this child absolutely loves and appreciates what you've done, and see that growth. So even in that 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, that's still a step forward, and that should be validated and it should be acknowledged. That's progress.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I always tell people, journal it. Like with my kids, I journal it. And I'm not a journal person. So I have a gratitude journal just because I want to have gratitude in life, but it's not. Yeah. And that, they've done research studies that say physiologically that actually improves your health to have a gratitude journal. So there you go for that. But for my kids, I'll just have my phone on a notes, just each month, I'll just say we're struggling with pee, or we're struggling with, spitting food out, whatever their OCD issue is or their anxiety. Mm-hmm. And then to go back and see that pattern and be like, oh my gosh, last year in December, because I have no memory whatsoever, look how bad it was. And I think a lot of times we don't do that. We just look at what's in front of us or what could potentially be next, which is even scarier depending on our disposition for anxiety. And we don't often celebrate how far our kids have come. And especially when you are adopting, and the evolution, I know when I was in the adoption world, it's on speed. It's 0 to 60. And so they do go through that regressive period. And then all of a sudden they're walking, and all of a sudden they're independent. And you're doing childhood on fast forward.
Yeah. On steroids. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're seeing it a lot more rapidly, but I think just going back and seeing all the progress is very uplifting, because instead of looking at what will be, looking at what has been, can be inspiring. Because I rarely see someone who's drastically regressed to the point where they're worse than they ever were. Normally there's some progression, especially if you're working on it, you're aware of it, you're trying to give your child tools. Ultimately it's up to them. So
yeah, that's where we are now is in the past, mommy took care of everything. And that was a very large burden. But now he's able, with his communication skills and his coping skills, he's able to take some of the responsibility on himself. And Natasha, I am dumping it on him. Absolutely. like with your teen daughter, what would you think about this? And how would you plan this? And just handing it over. Do you think they're really saying that? And really just getting him to own his thoughts and his feelings. And I can't wait till he takes on more.
Yeah, sometimes they don't, but it doesn't matter because at that point it's their journey, And so even in the resistance of them, and this is my opinion, the resistance of them taking on their stuff, there's life lessons in that. Just even having something sit there and you're not doing it, but they're not doing it. It's still empowerment, even though it doesn't feel that way as a parent when you're like, why won't my child be motivated to work on their struggles right now? There are tools that they could be using, they're not using. It's still like they're exerting their energy and their power to say, I don't want to.
Good point.
Yeah, which I think sometimes parents are like, they feel like they're in a barrier. I know a lot of people in my community will often voice that, like, I don't know what to do because he doesn't want to work on anything. And really, and I know this is easier said than done because it's not my child and I'm over here, but in that standoff of them not doing anything, they're voicing their independence, even though they're struggling. It's hard for us to watch that, but it's the process of eventually getting them to own their own stuff. We have to step back, which is hard.
Yeah, I definitely don't like to watch the struggle. My son has food insecurities. And so one of the things that is very difficult for him is to start eating food every day. So breakfast is a battle, or it has been a battle. And then as we go through the day, he's a little bit more comfortable and physically starving, so more motivated to eat food. Mm-hmm. And we have come to this place where I'm like, okay, you're a big boy. You're not going to starve, I hope. I really hope you're not going to starve. But if you wanted to eat half a bowl of cereal or just 2 pieces of Cheerios, you can choose. And he's learning that when he doesn't get enough food, his body hurts and he's hungry and cranky and all of these things. But there's no amount of me lecturing or teaching, or there's no inputs I can provide anymore aside from not force feeding, but therapeutically feeding my son. Force feeding. I hate it. But there's nothing more for me to do. He needs to understand for himself why we eat food and why it's important to have food when you take medication, especially. And I just hope that, and he's still doing this experimenting in a guided, safe environment. And I hope he becomes empowered through that. He gets to know if he doesn't want to take his meds today, what does that mean? And that just means he's going to have a harder time and he's going to need some extra supports, or he's going to need to ask for help. And I don't want to send the message that he has to be on medication for the rest of his life. It's not a crippling or limiting issue, but if he doesn't want to be on medication, which is an option, he's going to have to know how to ask for help, how to get to a safe place, how to meet his sensory input needs in an appropriate way, because medication is not the only option. He could be unmedicated with the right skills, and holy moly, that's amazing. That would be such a success story. And so, whichever path he takes, I want him to be successful with. And you mentioned the journaling. So that's how I ended up writing a book.
That's what I was going to ask you about. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had a you when we were fostering. I had someone who would come to the house, and they weren't on the foster side. It wasn't get these kids out of here. It was the family sustainability type of motivation of, we want you to be successful. So when these problems arise, we're not going to say, oh, well, we're going to say, hey, here's every resource you can even imagine. Let's fill your cup. And one of the things that I was told by our adoption support worker was to start writing my thoughts down. Good, bad, ugly, all of them, write them down. So I started journaling, and I could see, looking back at this journal, how intense certain things were and how momentous others were. And it gave me perspective, and it gave me a sense of control over my own mind, and just to see, hey, some days go up, some days go down. I still am who I am. And if today's a down day, I'm going to write about that. And that's okay too. I had an outlet that wasn't my child, because I didn't want that to come out and spew onto him, because my problems, my insecurities, they're mine. just like his are his. They're with this invisible illness. He's got to figure out how to deal with that on his own. And same for me. So writing ended up evolving into another therapist advising me, hey, Janelle, you need to go and do something that's productive with all of these thoughts and ideas. You should go do something that has nothing to do with your child. So I ended up writing a book on my child. I mean, not really about my journey, but I ended up going to a writing group and communicating those ideas, and they were validated. People said, I'm so proud of you. This is exciting. And that's the same sense of control or recontrol and re-owning my identity of my thoughts, my feelings, my experience is helpful, beneficial, relatable, and I'm not off in crazy outer space land where I think I'm alone or nobody understands. And that was one of the best things I've ever done in my life, was to put these thoughts into words and have them be validated.
Yeah, and then do it for other people.
Yes.
There's something really validating about reading a memoir and being like, oh my gosh, I have these feelings and I didn't want to say them. I didn't want to admit them. And here they are. Here's someone else having them, which is so healing for other people to read.
Right. I have a lot of those in the book. I had to do some praying or digging within myself to say, do I put these words in there? And at some point, I had sent a chapter to someone who has another child with special needs. And she said, Janelle, you said the things that I've wanted to say. This is my life, but I still feel like I can't say it. Would you please say it? And I said, all right, that was all I needed, was for someone to say, this is absolutely real. You're not alone. Say it.
Yeah.
And I hit all kinds of comments about how powerful the story is. And I did fear people would say, oh my gosh, I can't believe she wrote what? She did what? She thought what? And I'm waiting for the review to come in and say, oh, foster mom thought about doing that or doing this, or I'm waiting for it. But it's not coming. People just keep saying, yes, that is what it feels like. And thank you for expressing that. And thank you for making me feel that I am important. My thoughts are valid. My feelings are valid. And that on top of all of this mess, I can actually get out. And they watch me get out of the gutter, as I call it. Yeah. And I want to empower other women, and I want them to know that they're not alone. And some of this is just very scary. Constantly being reminded that you have no idea what you're doing, or you're not qualified, or not ready, you didn't prepare, there's no handbook. No one gets a handbook for their child. Yeah. Constantly being reminded that you don't have what it takes. You have to have a grounded perspective of who you are, regardless of the situation, that you can get what you need. You can actually learn the skills. You can go get the resources. I mean, that's how we get a job. If we want the job, we go learn. It's very basic, but in motherhood, there's something very powerful about being told, or through messaging, that you don't have what it takes. And it's hard to overcome. And sometimes it's from within us, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. So I do walk readers through losing that sense of power and identity and regaining that sense of power and identity. Yeah,
which I'm excited to read it. I haven't read it yet. It just came out. When did it come out?
Officially came out on, not January, February 1st. And because I self-published and I don't know how Amazon works, the moment I put the documents on Amazon platform, they were released. So it's officially been out for 6 weeks, or I guess unofficially.
Yeah.
And it's already raised up to the 95th ranking in all books on adoption. So it's in the top 100 for all books on adoption.
That's impressive.
It is. I don't know how to handle this. I'm so excited. And then it's in the top 1,000 for all books on parenting, which I don't think I intended it to be truly a parenting book, but that experience is resonating with the readers and the ratings are going up, and it's just very exciting. My son loves it. He wants to hand them out for free. We've had talks about it. Can't really do that always. And he feels like a celebrity, and with the first royalty check, we are going to go buy him. He wants a tuxedo. We're going to go buy him a suit. That is his.
Cute.
That's what he gets. What he deserves. What he's dreaming of. He wants to be fancy and a celebrity a little bit.
That is so cute. So, what's the name of the book so people can find it?
It is called Unadoptable Faith Beyond Foster Care. And that's unadoptable, all pulled apart with a big hyphen in the middle, because I can't use that word. I really struggled with that word so much. And then I realized my son is unadoptable because he's mine.
Aww.
And I took that concept of rejection, and I took full ownership of it. And I said, yeah, you can't adopt him because he's mine.
I love that. I love that. He's so lucky. He's lucky that he found such a awesome forever family. So where can people find more information about you besides, obviously your book is on Amazon and it's doing really well. So, and I personally, I love reading memoirs, so I will definitely get your book. Are you going to record it?
If I have time ever in my life, yes.
You have a good voice. You have a good radio voice. I think you should. It's easy. I can tell you how to do it. I did it for my book.
Yes.
On Audible. But what was I saying? So, I love reading memoirs. And so I honestly think that just reading your memoir, even if you are not in the foster adoption world, I think so many people, even today, listening to this can relate to everything you're saying, because you can really generalize this, that a lot of us feel these struggles and a lot of these feelings that we don't want to say out loud because it's stuff that no one talks about. The ugly feelings. I think I did a whole podcast on the ugly feelings that we have that no one wants to talk about. And, and then feeling inspired, that, the story continues obviously, but that you got yourself to a place where you got out of that darkness, and it's just inspirational. So I hope everybody checks it out. Is there a website too people can go to learn more about you?
Yes, I am at JanelleMolony.com, and I hope you put that in the notes because the spelling is weird. And also I am the author of AdoptionToLife.com, or on social media at AdoptionToLife, which is a play on words. So going from the moment of adoption to what now? And so I do share on our struggles and our successes. And sometimes I flat out say, hey, I don't know how to do this. And so I love the community that's been fostered in that social media world. So please check it out. Follow me. Ask me questions. Tell me what you think about the book. I want to hear honest, gritty. Give it to me. I want to hear all about it. And just encourage more women and more parents. It doesn't have to be women, but I want to encourage more parents with the absolute truth that there is hope for tomorrow, and today is not the end, and that crisis of the day, you don't have to be caught up in it. It's not a tornado that lasts forever. It lasts a moment, and then there's more, and you regain, you recoup, and you have what it takes.
Yep. Good message to end on. I love it. Go follow her on Instagram and hear her sing.
Thank you.
Such good songs. That's worth it in itself. I follow her on Instagram especially. Thank you so much for coming on, Janelle. I really appreciate it.
Thank you again, Natasha. Have a wonderful rest of your week.
You too. So if you want to check out Janelle, your podcast, it does help. Every little bit does help. Lets other parents know that there's value to the show. If you have a few extra seconds and you really feel like giving back, or you have something really nice to say, you can leave a review. I greatly appreciate that. And to show my gratitude, I always like to leave the show reading one of them. So I want to thank Michelle Hall for leaving a review. She wrote, "The best." Thank you, Michelle. She said, "I love all the podcasts and videos Natasha does. We've been going to therapy about 5 months now to help my 13-year-old son with OCD. The way she explains it has helped my whole family understand it. I think we should have learned this information in therapy, but didn't. We still would be floundering around today if it wasn't for Natasha. We absolutely love her. Thank you, Michelle. That's a bittersweet review because it makes me so frustrated when I hear that people are floundering in therapy, but it also warms my heart that I'm able to, from afar, get people on the right track. So if you have something to say, maybe I'll be reading your review next time. So don't forget to find the sparkle in everything you do, and I'll talk to you again next Tuesday. Take care.
Thank you for listening to AT Parenting Survival Podcast. For more tips and parenting support, visit anxioustoddlers.com.